Unit 5.5, Test Information. Strategies for breaking down a prompt and organizing a response. 1. Attack the prompt. What is the major task? How long should it be? What type of essay is it? 2. Pre-plan outline. Informational, argumentative, based on the prompt. Make an outline for the number of body paragraphs and number of pieces of evidence you will need. Narrative, make a plot mountain. 3. Fill in outline. Informational, argumentative, write your thesis, jot subclaims, jot keyword evidence. Narrative, jot character and setting, plot 3 events, rising action, climax, resolution. Plan to use dialogue, internal monologue, description, imagery, etc. Pacing reminder, left-hand side, 5 minutes ATP and pre-plan, 10 to 15 minutes read with prompt in mind, 10 to 15 minute plan narrative may take longest to plan, 50 to 60 minute writing and revising. On the right-hand side, know yourself. Do you take longer than quote normal to read in order to really understand a text? Does it take you longer to put your thoughts down in writing? Adjust the reading and writing times according to your test-taking history. Do not skip ATP or planning. That never works out. Text 1, Williams Sisters Have Traveled a Tough Road by Kurt Streeter. Saturday morning on the pock-marked grass at Wimbledon Center Court, 2 sisters from Compton will trade booming services and bolo punch foreheads for All England title. When the last ball is struck and Venus and Serena Williams embrace at net, they will have finished facing off in Grand Slam final for the 7th time, the 3rd time on British soil. This is a supremely consistent duo. A. Williams' sister has played in the Wimbledon women's singles final every year this century but one. We've grown accustomed to seeing these 2 powerful women hoist gleaming trophies and smile those big, bright smiles and fight for each point like it is some sort of golden nugget, so accustomed that we take the Williams sisters for granted. We tend to forget the obstacles they faced, how they persevered, and the fact that they've been doing all of these years defies expectations. Think about the odds. When they were little girls, Venus and Serena's enigmatic father told everyone who would listen that his girls would one day take professional tennis by storm. He was castigated and scorned. Fact is, given how difficult tennis is, even if Richard Williams had been a wealthy suburban dad audacious enough to say that his girls would one day earn tennis scholarships to Weber State, he'd been branded delusional. Venus and Serena weren't daughters of a suburban dad. They hail, we know, from the hard Southland flats, and they've spent their formative years learning tennis in South LA, most difficult neighborhoods. Compton and its environs are a maze that must too often be moved through with caution. I know this. Not long ago, a member of my own family was murdered there, a baby caught in a crossfire in front of my great-aunt's well-tended home. Venus and Serena know this too. Tennis prowess allowed them to leave Compton for Florida just before they reached their teens. They made it out, partly because of the tightly focused gaze of their parents, but that focused gaze and that discipline couldn't keep Venus and Serena's sister, Yetunde, from being gunned down by a gang member as she innocently drove on a dark South LA street 5 years ago. No, in some parts of LA, strong parenting is often not enough to protect, but it did help Venus and Serena from their inner strength necessary to succeed despite the odds and critics and naysayers, of which there have been many along the way. What they've done crashing through the upper reaches of virtually all-white sport, then remaining there for over a decade, borders on the impossible. I've some small sense of what they've been through. I'm African American and I played tennis at a pretty high level. I was a captain on Cal's 1989 indoor national champion tennis team and for a short while a lowly ranked scuffling player in the minor leagues whose highest world ranking was number 448 in doubles. That's not as high as I would have liked, but put in another perspective, it's not too terribly bad. There are about 1,200 players with world rankings on the men's tour when I played, and I could count the ones who looked like me with 2 hands. Think it's any different now, even with Venus and Serena? Think again. Nothing comes easy when you're that distinct a minority. You've got to have a strong spine and immense confidence to fight against isolation and doubt, both self-inflicted and coming from others. You're forced to play at country clubs whose exclusionary policies make walking in the door problematic. Some opponents and fans, emboldened, are more than open about their attitudes, calling you every name in the book. Happened to me more times than I'd like to admit, most memorably in a match against Arizona State that nearly ended in a brawl. The Williams sisters, trust me, grew up facing this kind of pressure, doubt and isolation, writ large, mega large. They still face it. Serena recently had to deal with an allegedly racist heckler at a tournament in Florida, closer to home, in 2001. The Williams family had subjected to a raucous, vile barrage of boos at a tournament in Indian Wells that one top tennis official said was among the harshest crowd behavior he'd ever witnessed. Who's to know what motivates crowds, but mainly believes the verbal taunts were motivated at least in part by race. This isn't to say that Venus and Serena haven't been treated well. They've been welcomed by the tennis world, adored and admired, and catered to in ways that should make us all proud. Somewhere in the heavens, Arthur Ashe and Aletha Gibson are beaming. The progress we're seeing these days is real. Remember this on Saturday. Remember, too, the hard journey Venus and Serena Williams had taken to once again reach the finals at Wimbledon Tennis Taj Mahal. None of this come easy for these daughters of South LA. Text 2. Misty Copeland overcomes adversity to star with American Ballet Theater by Mary Carroll McCauley. Misty Copeland didn't always have food to eat when she was growing up in the Los Angeles area. She and her 6 siblings competed for sleeping space on the floor of a room in a shabby motel. But just 4 years after 3-year-old Misty took her first ballet class in the San Pedro Boys and Girls Club, and after surviving a custody battle that made national news, she joined what arguably is the most prestigious classical dance troupe in the United States. After becoming just the 3rd African-American soloist for the American Ballet Theater in the past 3/4 of a century, Copeland achieved a measure of pop culture cachet after she filmed a music video and performed with Prince. Now 31, Copeland's memoir, Life in Motion, An Unlikely Ballerina, was recently released. Here's an excerpt. Ballet has long been the province of the white and wealthy. Our daily toe-crushing exercises make point shoes as disposable as tissues, but they can cost as much as $80 a pair. I came from a San Pedro, California family that didn't always have enough food to eat, let alone money to spend on a hobby, and it wasn't until I was 13 years old that I could even take my first ballet class. Most of my dance peers had grown up immersed in the arts, putting on their first tutus not long after they learned to talk. They had summered in Europe, while I didn't get my first passport until I was 17. Their families had weekend homes. I spent part of my adolescence living on the floor of a shabby motel with my single mom. But I also stood out in another, even more profound way. I was a little brown-skinned girl in a sea of whiteness. I was 19 years old and just been promoted to American Ballet Theater Corps de Ballet. The Corps is an internal part of a dance company, the base that helps to weave the balletic tale. But for most ballerinas, the goal is to soar beyond it, to stand out enough to get a featured part and hopefully one day become a principal. That small band of stars. For now, though, I was just one of the cattle, and it was intensely competitive. No one in the main company knew that I was a prodigy who had started training 10 years later than most girls, nor did they care to find out. My reputation didn't precede me. I had to start from scratch. I felt that the other dancers, and even some of the instructors, were constantly judging me, and that many wondered why I was there at all. Perhaps some of it was in my head, but despite my love for ABT, I felt very much alone. When my second year in the Corps came, I had another obstacle in my way. I was not the same ballerina that ABT had known before. My body had completely changed. Like myself, I soon realized that ABT, too, was searching for the little girl that I had been. Finally, ABT's artistic staff called me in to tell me that I needed to lose weight. though those were not the words they used. Telling already thin women to slim down might cause legal problems. Instead, the more polite ambiguous in ballet was lengthening. You need to lengthen, Misty, a staffer said, just so you don't lose your classical line. I was just 5'2" and just over 100 pounds. They suggested a nutritionist, but the company would have paid for it. I was trying to survive on a corps member's salary, $679 a week in New York, the most expensive of cities, and now I had this additional pressure to try and hire a specialist to help me lose weight. Like so many things that came late in my life, my introduction to ballet, a more mature body, I was also starting to feel another emotion most young people experience years earlier, often while they're still in high school: rebellion. Who do they think they're talking to? I would mumble to myself after a long, stressful day. I have so much talent. Why do I have to be stick thin? My plan was to outdance everyone, to be so technically perfect and unbelievably lyrical in my movements that all anyone would be able to see was my talent, not my curves or the color of my skin. I've come so far for the first ballet class I took at age 13 in my baggy gym clothes at the Boys and Girls Club. I knew that by being here now, in this rarefied, difficult, elitist, beautiful world, I have made my mark on history and ballet. I will forever fight, performing like it's my last show, and I will love every minute of it. Writing prompt: you just read 2 texts about athletes who have reached high levels of success in spite of various setbacks. Write an essay in which you compare and contrast the obstacles the Williams sisters and Misty Copeland have faced as they achieve their goals. Your response should be in the form of a multi-paragraph essay. Use evidence from both texts.